find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another delightful episode of the Atheist Experience. I am your host, Russell Glasser, and with me today is the indefatigable Martin Wagner.
I am being indefatigable right here, as you see.
Right. Today is Sunday, August 30th. We are a live call-in internet atheist show based in Austin, Texas. The Atheist Experience is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a non-profit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. You can find out more by visiting www.atheistcommunity.org. And when you do, be sure to check out the FAQ page for answers to frequently asked questions that we receive on the show. This show is live on Ustream.com every Sunday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Central Time. If you're just watching clips on of the show on the internet, then you're missing out. To watch us live, please visit the official Atheist Experience website, www.atheistexperience.com. Click on live stream at the top of the page. Atheist-Experience. Although I did try atheistexperience.com and found that it redirects. I think we pay for both, possibly. Anyway, you can also participate in a chat room during the show, as I'm sure that many people are doing right now.
Hello, chatters.
Hi there. Also on the website, you'll find audio and video from past episodes. If you click on the archive link, you will find a list of programs that includes more links to both audio and video downloads, as well as a rapidly updated audio podcast. You can catch fan-selected clips of the Atheist Experience on YouTube, and you can also see full episodes of the show at blip.tv, or you can subscribe to our audio podcast. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Non-Prophets. Visit www.nonprofitsradio.com, PROPHETS, for more information. The next episode will be aired next week on Saturday, September 5th. Weekly meetings for the Atheist Community of Austin are hosted at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road from 11:30 to 1 every Sunday, except for the first Sunday of the month, usually, when we host our lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. The next lecture will unusually be held on the second Sunday of the month. That's September 13th. The lecture will feature Kathy Miller, who will be talking on the subject of the Texas State Board of Education, dragging our schools into the culture wars.
And Kathy Miller heads up the Texas Freedom Network, who
All right.
have been doing an amazing job.
An excellent organization.
Keeping tabs on what the fundagelical majority on the State Board of Education have been doing crazy stuff.
What was the crazy thing that they were doing recently?
Well, now the battle over evolution has sort of subsided, and now the big battle is in social studies classes.
Oh, that's right. They said they wanted to ratchet up the emphasis on conservative politicians.
Right. Well,
Isn't that it?
what they want to do straight up is just use Sunday social studies classes to push this whole "America is a Christian nation" myth thing, and they've hired frauds like David Barton of Wall Builders. And
I love David Barton because like anytime you see quotes from the founding fathers allegedly proving that they meant that America was a Christian nation, 9 times out of 10 you can trace that quote back to David Barton and no further.
Yeah.
Not back to the founding fathers, just back to something that David Barton pulled out of his ass.
Yeah, he's done a lot of fabricating of founding father quotes and what have you. And so it's this again. The State Board of Education will not stop. With this, it's crazy. So
don't miss that lecture.
Yeah, that'll be worth seeing.
If you can't make it to the morning meetings, you can always join us for dinner right after this here program if you're in Austin, beginning at around 6:30 every Sunday. Most of the people involved, there's a small handful of people now, but most of us will be going to Plucker's Wing Bar in North Austin, which is near the fabulous, spacious Dillahunty International Studios where we are right now.
International Studios!
The address of that is 11066 Pecan Park Boulevard, and it's near Lakeline Mall. And so come hang out with us around 6:30 today. Finally, the ACA also hosts an Atheist Happy Hour every Thursday beginning at around 7 p.m. Last I heard, this week's Happy Hour will, as usual, be at the Dog and Duck Pub, even though there's been some juggling lately. And that's located at the corner of 17th and Guadalupe. If you'd like to get in touch with us but don't feel like calling in, you can email us at tv@atheist-community.org. Now, until we get back into the public access studio, we will be relying on your Skype calls to keep this show moving forward. And I don't think we have an official topic today, so we'd like to get Skype calls coming on in. Basically, the way you do that is that you sign up for Skype. You do not call us, but you add, what is it, Atheist TV. Atheist TV. All one word. Is that with 2 T's or 1?
It's with 2. Yeah.
Okay, Atheist TV, all one word. You add us to your contact list, and then you send a message to Atheist TV. And then Frank will decide which of you is worthy to speak with us today.
Frank holds the power.
We do have a couple of calls lined up already. Be sure to check out the unofficial show blog at the atheistexperience.blogspot.com site, where Martin has made his first post in a long time.
No, it's just been... I've needed a break, folks. I've needed to decompress. But I'll be busy in...
Poor Martin.
I know. I'll be busy in September, though. Definitely. Yeah. So, lots going on.
No, I'm deciding so that if they don't get in, they can blame me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep messing that up. Okay, Frank is actually doing the hard work of keeping us broadcasting. Matt Dillahunty, who's our usual host, will be screening your calls. And, you know, so suck up to him, not Frank.
I'm staying out of this discussion completely. Yeah.
Special announcements. September 26th is the date of the 2009 ACA Bat Cruise, which I confused everybody last month by saying was coming up in August. You didn't miss it. It's still Christmas morning. Or whatever we atheists would say. Some of us celebrate Christmas. But anyway, you can still sign up for the ACA Bat Cruise on September 26th. And the Texas Free Thought Convention is coming up. You can check that out at, I believe, texasfreethoughtconvention.com. And that's all. How's it going, Martin?
It's going well with me, Russell.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess we want to launch right into callers, right?
Yeah, let's talk to the people.
Okay, then we've got somebody in Queens.
Sid, seems like.
Oh, it's Sid, right.
Sid in Queens is first.
Yes. Hello?
Hi.
Hello.
You're on.
Oh. Hi. No, my name is Caesar.
Oh, okay.
Caesar.
My email name. Well, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
No, we can hear you great.
Oh, okay. First of all, I want to apologize if I'm a little bit nervous.
So, that's all right.
Okay.
You're just going out to a bunch of idiot atheists on the internet. What wonderful! We love our fans, and we love us, and we love atheists.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible PR
that's one of the reasons why I call, because I have no atheist friends to debate with, so.
Okay.
I can try it out here, and this is my 3rd time calling.
Okay.
And actually, I'd like to talk about a subject that I'm kind of surprised isn't talked about often in your show, which is the near-death experience.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and the near-death experience is something like of a hobby of mine. I really know on it a lot. Just nothing serious. So I know a bit about it. I'm not an expert though, but I find it utterly fascinating because I've heard the skeptics saying, that it's really just the brain going through like a dying process, chemicals or, the brain's going haywire and it's making you hallucinate at the time of death. And and actually, I can't. Sorry, no one can actually. I can't say yes or no. That's what's really happening. But when I look at the actual experience, it kind of points to a direction where that's not what's happening at all. That has nothing to do with the brain or any material explanation in that way. That's what I would like to talk about.
Can you give an example of one of these experiences, and what about it makes you think that it's got nothing to do with your brain getting a little wonky?
Yeah, there's so many, but like the most, I don't know if it's the most famous one. It's the one with Howard Storm. I don't know if you heard of the guy.
Storm?
Nope.
Howard Storm. Yeah, he used to be a professor of art. I forgot which university, but I seen him being interviewed several times, so I know his particular ND experience pretty well. And he was a hardcore atheist, the kind of like you guys. He's very intellectual, but he's not. He doesn't go out of his way, to debate atheism or like theists or whatever. But if somebody comes up to him and talk about atheism, theism, he's totally an atheist. So, totally does not believe in God or religion. And he had an experience, and his near-death experience totally changed his life. And he gave up he was an art professor, he gave that up, and he became a minister or I think a minister of some sort. I'm not 100% sure on what. But can we talk about that?
Sure.
Well,
okay.
I mean, in as much as neither of us really are familiar with Howard Storm, I don't really know that we can, until we read up on him and study him a little bit, we can't really respond to what we think about his particular experience.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I wouldn't want to launch into something blind. I mean, I am certainly aware that people go from being atheists to being theists all the time, just like people go from being theists to being atheists, or they go from Christians to being Jews or whatever. One person's changing their mind, while interesting in itself, is like an anecdote. And
okay,
yeah.
I see. When actually about the near-death experience, most atheists, and I wish I had the figures, but we're talking about percentages here. Like over 95% of atheists who have the near-death experience all of a sudden become theists. They're no longer atheists.
Well, over 98% of statistics are made up on the spot, so I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
where
if you had an actual study to point out, I mean, explaining how they selected their sample set, then we might have something to discuss. But I mean, obviously, we can't really talk about something random thrown out like 95% that we have no way of verifying.
Sure.
Well, that's an educated guess. I mean, I don't have the exact.
Wait, it's a guess?
An educated guess?
I thought
you said.
I
mean, like, when I read up on these things, every NDE case involving an atheist, he converts to.
Well, I mean, of course, when you read a story about it, it usually involves an atheist having a near-death experience and changing his mind, because a story where, like, an atheist was near death and then experienced something weird and then wasn't convinced by it doesn't tend to get written down or noticed by anybody.
Yeah, and a lot of these sources that you might be reading, and until, without knowing exactly what they are, but I suspect that you have been reading a lot of sources that might be websites, they might be books, and these are probably written by people who are in what you might call the paranormal community or something. They're believers in these kinds of phenomenons, and so they're and so they're usually going to. It's in their interests. The converting the skeptic theme is prevalent in a lot of stories about whether it's ghosts or UFOs or the Loch Ness Monster or this or that. You frequently find stories being told about Sometimes people will just say it themselves, like, I was a total unbeliever until this happened to me, and now I've changed. These are very, very frequent themes that come up in these kinds of stories. So because we hear it so often, and because we know it's part of the sales pitch for these beliefs, we tend to be very, skeptical about that sort of thing. And also, knowing that near-death experience is a phenomenon that has been studied, and in fact the actual experience of what is reported to be going on during an NDE, such as going down the tunnel of light and having feeling disconnected from your body, etc., etc., etc. These feelings have been artificially induced, okay, by stimulating the brain, right? I mean, it's
that's
so
something we can talk about.
Yeah, so it's been done. It's kind of known to be some sort of brain phenomenon, right?
Also, another thing that this illustrates is basically that a lot of times conversions happen under emotional duress. I mean, frequently when a question that we get thrown at us frequently is, why did you become an atheist? Did some big major traumatic event happen to you? And usually the conversion from theism to atheism happens over a long period of time with a long period of self-reflection, because there's no sudden emotional flash that happens. When somebody has a very when somebody has a very sudden traumatic emotional experience, that's the time when you're least likely to get accurate information out of that person. So I mean, even if 100% of the people who converted, who experienced these things, wound up converting, it wouldn't actually demonstrate that they were right.
Yeah, that there was some real phenomenon going on. You'd have to test it. You'd have to find some way to test it kind of independently, and base your results not just on, oh, well, this happened to me and it changed my life. All that proves is that something happened to a group of people, and their response to it was they changed their ways. Right. But we still don't know exactly what it was that happened. It could just be a brain chemistry phenomenon, or it could be some sort of external phenomenon that yet we can't determine. Also, I'd be
curious to know if all of them converted to Christianity. I mean, if you experience this in a predominantly Hindu country, do you suddenly have this revelation oh, wait, this Jesus guy that I heard once a really long time ago is the answer? I know that now from the thing, from this experience I just had.
Yeah, do people have NDEs and then become Zoroastrians? It's very interesting that no matter where you find conversion stories taking place, it usually tends to be a conversion to, stroke of luck, what just happens to be the majority religion of that culture anyway. So,
well, that's not surprising. I mean, you're gonna go to a religion that might be more comforting to you, but the thing is that.
But this is the point. This is the point. That if you were to say have a record of this kind of phenomenon taking place, let's say some sort of primitive tribal culture out in darkest Africa or the Australian outback or someplace like that, right? Where these are primitive peoples who have never had any exposure whatsoever to, say, the Bible or Christian teachings, right? Someone who has never in his entire life had that kind of experience, that kind of religious education, that background. He experiences some sort of NDE or some kind of phenomenon and suddenly becomes a believer in Jesus, even though there's absolutely nothing in his culture.
I think it would be really hard to screen out how much contamination. I mean,
but I'm giving just sort of
exposure they actually have.
But I'm giving kind of a general example of if this sort of thing were to happen, where you would have a Christian conversion in a place where you would not be likely to have that sort of thing happen anyway, in the first place, then that might be an interesting phenomenon to study.
Okay, and you know what, guys? Actually, and I can only really talk about the Western experiences, like in America and Canada.
Oh, of course.
Right. I don't have much knowledge about Eastern near-death experiences, unfortunately. But what I can say about most Americans who have the near-death experience, even people who don't believe in God or Jesus, they will meet God or Jesus so people who don't believe in Jesus, they tend not to meet him that often, but they do definitely tend to meet God, which is about like I think about 27% of people who have an NDE experience.
Where are these numbers coming from?
Yeah, I mean, a minute ago you threw out the number 95%, and then a couple moments later you said that it was just a guess. I mean,
and now it's 27%.
Where's this 27% coming from?
Yes, you have to. There should be studies to that exist if you're starting to list figures, right?
Yeah, there are. It's I can cite my source. It's on the. It's a website. I mean, do you actually want the address to go ahead and take a look at it?
I'd be curious about what the address is, to be honest.
Yeah.
Or right. at least the...
But wherever it is, you read something on a website, right? I think the immediate thing to do, if you want to make sure you're getting accurate information, is take that and now look at other sources, not just other websites, but maybe books that have been published, studies that have been done. Check out if this website that you're reading now is in full possession of the facts. Because just saying, well, I have a website is my source, that's sometimes not necessarily good enough.
Okay, the website is neardeath.com. You could just Google it, you'll find it right away.
Yeah, I'm sure that's one without an agenda.
Yeah, I would like to talk about the actual experience. A lot of time it's being taken up, and we haven't even gotten to the experience.
Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes to go over the experience, and then I think we have to move on to other callers.
Okay, 5 minutes. All right, like... Many people, not everybody meets God or Jesus in every NDE, but the interesting thing is that most Americans, even people who are atheists, you will agree that in their culture, they know about God and Jesus, about Christianity, they know about Satan, the devil. It's all in the Bible. Even though they don't believe in it, they have knowledge about it, right?
Yes, that's part of the point.
Yeah, and then you might say, well, even if an atheist has an NDE experience, his brain might go back into that, since he knows he's dying, the brain might have some sort of emergency software where it runs into, it makes it hallucinate a dying experience. I don't know why it would do that, but let's say that's what it does, right?
Right. I've been informed just now that astronauts experience near-death experience, something like a near-death experience in training.
Well, all they do is they experience the light in the tunnel. They don't experience like 90% of the other stuff, like meeting of the relatives, gaining knowledge, out of body experience. Well,
how do you know they don't? Have you seen this?
Huh?
How do you know they don't? Have you seen this?
I read so many accounts that I mean, I don't know. I must have read dozens, hundreds of accounts, and
right.
I just.
Well, I know. Here's why the near-death experience phenomenon, I think, is appealing to people, and here's why I think that there are so many accounts that you've read, and all of which seem to be pooling similar information and what have you. It is part of human nature. Okay, it's part of our hardwired survival instinct. We don't want to die. All right. If there's one thing that the human race has been looking for, ever since we got up on all fours, it's a cure for death. And if we can't have the cure for death, then we want the next best thing, which is we want to know that when you die, you really don't. That has been at the core of so much of what religion has been doing for 10,000 years and more. And now you have these sort of non-religious, but still sort of quote-unquote spiritual concepts of life after death, which you find reported in, say, near-death experiences, or by these television psychics who tell you that, they can contact your dead grandfather or what have you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that what you're reading and why all of these reports are so prevalent has a lot to do with this cultural phenomenon that has the same thing that has inspired religion for so many years.
Well, I agree with you, but I'd like to give Caesar a couple minutes at least to go over the experience.
That's what I'm saying, is that we need
interruption.
But the point that I was simply making is that you're reading accounts, and these are called anecdotal evidence, and anecdotes, unfortunately, aren't considered good evidence, mainly because there's no way you can say, all right, let's take that and let's test it, and let's see if it works over and over again the same way, see if we can confirm that response. And
it has been tested, but I agree. Can you give me at least maybe 2 minutes to finish up?
Yeah, please.
Sorry. So, let's take a tip. So like, many atheists have this experience, and they might meet God, they might meet Jesus, or they might not. But there's something really interesting though. The people who have this NDE in America, in the West, they believe in God and Jesus. They also believe in the devil because he's like the arch enemy of God or whatever. He's like the bad guy. Everybody who believes in God tends to believe in the devil too. And the interesting thing is that in the near-death experience, nobody ever met the devil. He does not exist. He never shows up. Even people who have hellish ND experience who go to hell, they never meet the devil. Nobody, any entity that they encounter in hell never says, "I'm the devil, I'm Satan." It never happened. And that's just one of the things that makes it kind of suspicious. I'm saying, this is really just a fantasy of a dying brain. Why isn't the brain fantasizing? Why doesn't it bring up the Satan, the all-important arch enemy of God? He never shows up ever.
That's an interesting point.
Because most people who believe that stuff think they're going to heaven.
No.
That's just the way it is.
People have hellish experience, really bad ones where they're thrown into hell, and they might meet. What they usually meet are like shadow people, and they might meet some sort of creatures, but they're more human. They're not. Nobody ever meets demons with horns and pitchforks and a tail. Almost never happens. You usually just meet shadow people or people that are like, you can't really tell what they are. And Satan is never encountered. And the reason why is because some people, when they actually talk to God in these near-death experience, when the few people who actually met God, they ask about Satan, and God simply says he doesn't exist.
Oh, okay. So you're bringing this up because you don't believe in hell.
No, I do believe in hell. Hell is real. People do go to hell.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that hell is not. And another thing about that, many people think hell is forever. Actually, it's not. In the experience, people who went to hell.
Now you're just saying stuff that you have no reason to know.
Yeah, we're getting into a whole other thread of the conversation.
I'm talking about the actual experience. The people, the eyewitness testimony of these people who went through this stuff is coming. I'm getting information from them. I'm not making it up.
Okay.
Now, why?
Well,
ahead.
I think we ought to move on to another call.
Yeah, but my parting question for you would be: what reason do we have to think that these experiences that these people are reporting are anything other than A, dreams, B, hallucinations, C, the brain doing crazy things, or D, just stories that are being told in order to further some kind of and reinforce existing beliefs?
All right. One is Satan. Basically, most people believe in Satan. They never met the guy. Nobody ever met him. There's other things too. Reincarnation. Many Christians don't believe in reincarnation. Guess what? They're told you do reincarnate, and you actually reincarnate quite often. 3, there's probably you ask a question to God, he always answer it to you, or to the angels, or whatever you want to call them. Is there life on other planets? They always say yes. And they say, are there intelligent life? They say yes, but then they say that it's not as common. Usually the stuff.
I want to know. I want to know Tuesday's mega ball numbers. That's what I want. That's what I would ask.
And you see that kind of stuff, the money, the materialistic thing. The thing is that that's totally not important. I mean, people are not sent to Earth.
All you're telling us, though, is that during these near-death experiences, people have near-death experiences which closely match the culture that they're in. They match their expectation.
Yeah, but
you're not telling. I mean, if there is a supernatural, one way that you could test it is to have them come up with something really novel and unusual, like the Powerball numbers, or something less self-serving. Mm-hmm. But we really do have to.
The thing is very unusual, isn't it? I mean, most people believe he's real, and the people.
I don't think it's all that unusual.
We're gonna move on now.
We're done, but I'm just going to say, thanks a lot for your time, but in your call. But I think it's not that unusual that people aren't reporting meeting Satan, because most people who die. I mean, most people who believe in that sort of thing, even if they're, I'm not the best Christian in the world, but they don't believe that that's where they're going. So, yeah.
Also,
hell is something that happens to other people.
While Matt is queuing up the next caller, also, you notice that when you have a psychic, somebody who talks to people who are dead, in the great beyond, that quack,
Sylvia, John Edward, yeah.
when they ask, well, my father's dead, where is he? He never says,
he's burning.
Your father's in hell. He's in great pain. And by the way, he hates you.
Yeah.
You always hear these, answers that are
warm and fuzzy and loving,
yes,
and reassuring. That's really all that's going on.
If we get around to it, I'd like to take some time to talk about concepts of primary sources.
Yeah.
But I think we should get to the next caller, who is Kenji in Gainesville.
Oh, hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you great.
Hey, Kenji.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous. This is my first time ever calling in. I've listened to you guys for a while, though. You're awesome.
Thank you. Thanks.
But yeah, I'm a non-theist myself. I don't believe in religion or anything like that. But I don't like the term atheist. For one reason mainly. Are you familiar with the philosophy of dialectical materialism?
Operate under the assumption that we don't remember it.
Okay, right.
And
basically, okay, sorry. It says, there's a thesis, there's an antithesis, and together they make a synthesis. Basically, someone puts forth an argument, whatever it is, and I guess in this case it would be the existence of a god, and then someone else comes up with an antithesis, there is no god, and together they kind of, go forward, and it both legitimize the other. The religious side, they give legitimacy to the atheists in that they're always opposing them, and that's the same thing conversely with the atheists obviously opposing religion. Now the problem I see with that is atheism then is actually granting some legitimacy to religion because it's opposing it. Now,
in what way? I mean, if you have a guy who says we never landed on the moon, and you have another guy who said yes we did, does that legitimize the idea? I mean, does a contradiction automatically make one side credible?
Well, no, but what I'm talking more about is, at the same time, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call myself an Santa Clausist because I think the idea of Santa Claus is so absurd.
You're making a good point. You're making a similar point that Sam Harris made in a speech. I think was it the Atheist Alliance International? It was some major convention. It was either American Atheists, their annual thing, or one of the big conventions. He came out and made essentially the same point that you did, that we don't have a word for people who don't believe in fairies, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have a word for people who don't believe in Santa Claus. You don't say you're an Santa Clausist, right? So and then he proceeded to go ahead and make the argument that what we need to get society to our culture to a point is where a term like atheist is no longer needed simply by virtue of belief in God. But people coming to this realization that it's really no more sensible than belief in Santa Claus or fairies or pixies, and so and he I think made a similar point to that, which you're making, which is to say that the mere fact that atheism exists as a philosophical position, that the label is even there, tends to give at least a certain degree of validity, not validity in terms of, maybe these theists have something going on, but it is taking the position of theism more seriously than it deserves to be taken.
Right.
Like, if somebody says, well, I believe in fairies, and there goes one now, right? You wouldn't take that person seriously enough to, mount huge arguments about, here's why you're wrong about the fairies. But atheism is unwittingly giving theism, I guess, more cred than it should get.
Is what Martin's saying kind of an accurate summary of what you're getting at?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Well, here's why I don't agree with that. I mean, I can understand the position, and in some cases I might be inclined to agree with it. The problem is, I think that theism already has a certain escape velocity, if you will, level of credibility. When you have 85% of the country, or 80%, or whatever it is, declaring themselves Christians, in a sense, you don't need atheism to lend them credibility. I mean, there's a certain mentality of the same thing that your mother told you for dealing with bullies, which is ignore them and they'll go away. But they don't go away. I mean, I've got a story right here that I brought today about something happening in Kentucky. And I mean, you know, this is just an example of the kind of thing that we see on the show every single week. Yeah. Where a judge said that... What? A judge said that Kentucky can't legislate dependence on God. It says, the article says, it is one thing to trust in God, but quite another to be ordered to rely on protection from above during national emergencies, a judge has ruled. Franklin Circuit Judge Thomas Wingate said in Wednesday's decision that references to a dependence on Almighty God in the law that created the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security is akin to establishing a religion. Now, when you have states all over the place, and even the United States government passing laws that mandate some kind of acknowledgement of a supreme being, then you're beyond the realm of fairies. I mean, it's true that we don't believe in God, but we do believe in theists, and our main concern here is being able to basically get along in a society that is 85% theist. And for the most part, I like theists fine. I get along with people I meet, and I even get into conversations like, oh, I do this, you know, funny TV show about being an atheist. And they're like, huh, that's interesting. And then sometimes we have a discussion about it, and we don't wind up agreeing, but we don't wind up fighting each other. Those people aren't a problem. The people who are a problem are the people in Kentucky who are passing these laws. Or the
people on the Texas State Board of Education.
Who are mandating that my kid has to respectfully observe prayer in his school. That's the problem. And I think that to believe that if you ignore that kind of thing and it'll go away is a little bit naive. It just in my humble opinion.
Yeah, see, because Sam Harris, ironically, in one of his earlier books, made a point that I think tends to refute the point that he was trying to make in that speech that I just discussed, which is that in theists, or even in really, really devout Christians, for example, what you have is a person who, on the one hand, if you were to tell him something really nutty, like, hey, if you drink Mountain Dew, you'll turn invisible, or if you walk around with a terrier on your head, you'll be cured of headaches, right? You make claims like that to them, and they'll be as skeptical as you or I or anybody else, right? I'd like to see that, right? But when it comes to this specific thing, their religious beliefs, their Christianity, their belief in God, Jesus, what have you, they elect to disengage that little critical part of their brain. This is this sort of selective, well, I won't question that. So, in a sense, theism, I think you can't really ignore it, as Russell has pointed out, because unlike belief in fairies, belief in Santa Claus, which is a thing that we say, okay, it's a kid's thing, that's fine. Belief in most other, mythological beings or phenomena, theism is woven into our culture so thoroughly that it kind of has to be dealt with, especially when it starts infecting, public policy and things like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, over to you.
Okay. Yeah. I guess that's pretty much sums up that issue. Do we have time? I have one more thing I wanted to get to real fast, if that's
sure.
Okay. Otherwise, if other callers are. Are we good?
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, please.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted. I'm a university student, and I actually ran into a group of Christians who had a very underhanded, sort of devious way of proselytizing. So, they have all these...
Let's say it isn't so.
Yeah, knock me over with a feather.
You have booths in this plaza area with different organizations on campus and stuff. And I was just looking around to see what kind of organizations I might like to join. And they had one. It was just it was just like an acronym. They didn't say what it was. So as I started talking to guys, yeah, we do all these events and stuff. You can meet new students. It's really cool. Why don't you come out? We have we're playing some games and watching a movie, that sort of thing. So I figured, hey, what the hell? I'll come along and see what it's like. And I get there and it's it's a Christian group. They didn't advertise it as such. It was prayer, and they're trying to get me into a Bible study small group and all kinds of. It's false advertising, and it's.
It is false advertising, and more than that, it's what cults do. I mean, I'm not saying that group was a cult, but but you have to be concerned about a group that can't come straight out and say, I can at least respect someone who would say, "Hi, I'd like you to join this group where we tell you all about the love of Jesus." I mean, that's at least straightforward. But what a cult does is often drag you in on false pretenses, like, would you like to learn a way to make money in your spare time, or I have this wonderful men's support group that you might be interested in, and then you get there and then they're telling you about aliens from Xenu. Or no, wait, Xenu is the alien, but
yeah, it's so hard to keep track of this. You think that's a bad story? When I was in junior high school, okay, so we're talking 6th through 8th grade kids, right? And a guy came to the school and did his motivational speaking thing in the auditorium, which entertained everybody, all the kids, so much, and he just had them rolling in the aisles and laughing. And once he had gotten them all excited and worked up and everything, say, well, hey, tonight over at XX Church, we're going to be doing this again, so come on over. And at that point, it was just hardline Christian proselytizing all the way. And there was nothing, it was just as sleazy as any sort of used car, bait and switch sales thing that you'd ever experience. And this is everywhere, right?
There's something dirty feeling about that sort of bait and switch, and
like it's incredibly dishonest and sleazy.
Yes, right. I don't think that all churches do it, but I think that the prevalence of it is something that should cause an honest Christian to give pause and take a long, hard look at what he really believes is the right way to approach people.
But Kenji, we appreciate it, but we're going to go ahead and go on to the next guy.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah.
And next we've got Steve in Marina Del Rey.
Yes.
Steve?
Hi, how you doing?
We're good.
Hi.
Hi. I was calling. I first wanted to say that I really watch the show a lot and I enjoy it. I'm not an atheist, but I just wanted to express that. And I wanted to talk about, I've recently been reading The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins.
Okay.
I'm sure you've both read that.
Yes.
Yeah, and you may need to turn your speakers down on your computer just a tad because you're feeding back.
Sure.
He can't turn his speakers down, but yeah.
A little bit. Okay, anyway, you're reading The God Delusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what I wanted to read it just, out of interest to see what he had to say. A lot of my friends have read it. And the chapter I want to talk about was the chapter where he outlines what he thinks is his best argument for the reason he says there's certainly no God.
Okay.
And it's called the Ultimate 747 chapter, Ultimate Boeing 747 Argument. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and the argument, I think, could be sort of broken down simply into who created God, is basically what he's saying. That if you're saying God created everything that there is, that there has to be a creator, then who created God? And then whoever created God would have to be more complex than God.
Yeah, I think that's actually fairly common, that a theistic argument will run, well, you can't explain such and such without invoking a God. And the usual atheist reaction would be like, wait a minute, God isn't an explanation, it's just something you made up. How do you explain that in the same terms? So yeah,
right,
that is kind of similar.
The argument, but the problem that I see in that argument is that the same type of argument could be made if you took a naturalist worldview and said, how did life start? How did everything begin? And you said, well, who created the beginning of life? And it would sort of run into a similar problem.
Well, that is Dawkins' point, right? Dawkins, in this passage, is responding to that particular, position that theists take, which is that if as he says right here, Fred Hoyle's image of the Boeing 747 in the scrapyard. It's the whole idea of just all of these metallic parts coming together to form a plane. And and this is why apparently he thinks naturalistic explanations are inadequate. And so Dawkins' point is in response to that, which is to say, well, you could essentially make the same criticism about a god, right? I mean, where would a god have come from, and what process would have involved, his coming into being? And so why wouldn't it have the same problem?
I think the point of making that kind of argument is not so much that anybody's claiming that science understands everything, because it doesn't, that it has an explanation for everything, because it doesn't. It's actually a counter to the religious position that rather than investigating something scientifically, we should just jump to the conclusion that there is an unexplainable thing which explains everything, and that wraps everything up in a nice, neat little package. The problem with that is that if you're going to invent it because you need everything to have an explanation before you can be satisfied, it's a cop-out to come up with a god, which, after all, is not really all that abstract. It's a very specific thing based on human experiences. It's a human-like intelligence, but infinitely more complicated. Science generally reasons from the complex to the simple, so it tries to break things down. In order to qualify as an explanation, it has to actually make things more understandable, whereas throwing in a god is really just making up an even bigger mystery. Because, after all, intelligence is really the most complicated thing that we know about in the universe. So to say, oh, well, we'll explain everything in the universe by making up an intelligence is just reasoning completely backwards.
But I see it. You just said that everything is top down. So, but his viewpoint, the naturalist viewpoint, is bottom up.
In what way?
The naturalist viewpoint would be that there's no creator, and they can't explain how life first came into existence, or not even life, but why there's something instead of nothing, and that everything evolved from little bacteria up.
Right,
so
but we know that life does exist. You agree with that, right?
Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm just saying
So,
it's sort of I see the naturalist view, the completely naturalist viewpoint as being a bottom-up theory of starting out with simple life and becoming more complex rather than
exactly, but that's because we've reasoned backwards towards the simpler life. I mean, we have this world that's already in evidence. We know that this complex stuff exists, and the way that we explain it is by investigating proximate causes. Which
I guess
are
what I'm
generally
saying is though that I see
more understandable.
The point that Dawkins is trying to make, but I also feel like the flaw that he's trying to say, who created God, that you could sort of look at the opposite argument and see a similar flaw in, well, how did everything start? What was behind that? So I think that...
But as Dawkins points out in the passage, the whole 747 in the junkyard argument is based on a very common misunderstanding that a lot of creationist theists have about how processes like evolution work. They think, for example, there's a common misunderstanding is that evolution is just this complete random chance exercise where, you throw a whole bunch of nuts and bolts and rivets into a tornado and voila, you get an airplane out the end. But that's not in any way an accurate analogy for how, in biology, evolution by natural selection works, and anybody who thinks it does and then tries to make a criticism of some naturalistic scientific theories based on that is, really kind of talking out of his hat, because he's making a criticism based on ignorance of the actual science.
Let me try putting this another way. We have two things that potentially need explaining. We have God, and we have stuff. Okay, and by stuff, I mean the natural universe, everything that exists.
Yeah.
Now, an atheist does not necessarily claim to have an explanation for stuff. Okay? There are a lot of explanations for certain kinds of stuff. But there are limits to our knowledge, as both theists and atheists know, and so there's going to be a certain amount of stuff that's unexplained. Now, an atheist doesn't have to explain that stuff exists. He doesn't have to demonstrate it because you already believe in stuff, right?
Right.
You're saying, though, that not only is there stuff, but also there's this other thing we've never seen before, which is a God. And I don't have an explanation for that.
Right, but
an atheist has less to explain, basically.
Well, unless you think that God is an explanation for the stuff.
But even if you think that God is an explanation for the stuff, you have no reason to believe in God in the first place, and you have a much bigger problem now, which is explaining the God in addition to explaining the stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say an argument, and I know that this is a popular argument that's kind of laughed at, but okay. I guess what I'll try to do is
we'll refrain.
Pick apart the common criticisms I hear, and I understand them somewhat, but the whole idea of, I guess it's analogous to the watchmaker argument of everything needing a creator. And I understand that gets you to a point where you say, well, who created that and who created that? But I'm not sure that's a valid enough rebuttal of the principle that everything needs a creator.
Well,
because
does everything
you could also go back and then say, well, if everything that we observe needs a creator, then how could, in the beginning, how did the first life start? How did the first thing start? What I'm saying is that both arguments run into certain problems, but I don't think it's enough to sort of dismiss one offhand.
Well, the obvious problem, of course, with everything needs a creator is immediately that that has to apply to the creator, because if you're not going to apply that standard to the creator needing a creator, and then the creator's creator needing a creator, etc., 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 you're stuck with kind of what's called the special pleading fallacy, which is, well, here's my explanation that doesn't have to obey the inviolable rule that is inviolable for everything else in order to explain its existence. And in addition to the special pleading fallacy, you're now having to deal with the issue of infinite regress, back creators and super creators and going back to infinity.
But my exact point is that I understand.
And so a lot of theologians and apologists do their best to now try to avoid getting into that trap.
Well, I understand your criticism, but my exact point, what you said about infinite regress, is that same criticism could apply to a naturalist point of view. Yet one of them has to be right. But you
it was made up first to apply to a naturalist point of view. The whole point of the watchmaker argument was to make an argument that a God is required. But my point isn't that there must not be a God. It's that inserting a God doesn't explain anything. It doesn't solve the problem that it purports to solve. I'm not really trying to, I don't think Dawkins is even bringing this up to prove that there's no God. He's just saying that the arguments that there must be a God sort of refute themselves, if you catch
well, I mean. He says that's why there's almost certainly no God. That's what his the chapter says.
Well, that's one part among many, actually.
And I think another problem why this is a problem, and in these kinds of debates and arguments, is I think that theists almost always come from what I call a primacy of non-existence metaphysics, mm-hmm. which is that
that's a big word, boys and girls.
I said it all by myself too. Which is to say that they take the view that before everything there was nothing, and we eventually, and at some point we came from a state of nothingness to a state of somethingness, which is the universe. And I, as an atheist, don't really take that particular approach. I have what I call primacy of existence metaphysics, which is I take existence itself to be what you would call a causal primary, right? I mean, I shouldn't have to prove that existence exists, right? Because here we are, right? So now if you want to take that and say, well, it's not that the universe came from somewhere, or that before there was a universe there was nothing, but if you define the universe as the set of everything that exists, mm-hmm. and I know I'm ignoring popular hypotheses like alternate universes and wormholes and what have you, but if you want to define the universe as the set of all that we know exists. Prior to the Big Bang, we don't really know what there was. We don't even know if time itself existed. If the universe was a singularity prior to the Big Bang, then time itself would not necessarily have existed. then the universe, you can see the universe has always, in a sense, been here in some form. Existence has always existed. The Big Bang describes the event that caused the universe to expand into the form that it's in now. But prior to that, what can we say about, the form that the universe was in? But using Occam's razor, what is the more parsimonious explanation? That existence exists and has always done so, or at one point it didn't, and something else, some magical thing from another plane, made it exist by an act of will for reasons that we can't really know anything about, etc., etc. The theistic primacy of non-existence metaphysics, I think, violates Occam's razor in that it unnecessarily, adds, complicates or adds elements unnecessarily, I think is how you put it. Anyway, Russell, you're pondering.
Well,
come on, am I full of crap or what?
No, I don't think you're full of crap.
Why, thank you.
I think that there's a lot of speculation flying around here, and I think we would agree if the question was, is it conceivable that a God exists? But we would not agree that a God either has to exist or explains anything in a better way than science does.
Well, okay, personally, do you believe that a God is as unlikely as, like, the Tooth Fairy?
At least, yes.
Okay, so in a way, you don't want to commit yourself to saying, I absolutely don't believe it, but in a way, it's the same thing. For all
in a way,
intents and
sure.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't absolutely commit to a position.
I don't absolutely disbelieve in the Tooth Fairy. I just
but
think
that's
it's
why
very,
I drew
very
that comparison, to show that your belief is on that level of that so low that it's might as well be non-belief.
Yes, but it's not only because God is unnecessary that I don't believe in a God.
I mean, I guess the thing is, I see and other people see God as an answer to questions, and you're just saying it raises more questions.
Yeah, my whole point is that as an answer, it doesn't work. If you want to believe in God for personal reasons, then, more power to you and enjoy. But, I mean, the point of Dawkins' Ultimate 747 is just to say that as a solution to knotty philosophical problems, it's a cop-out.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't agree, but I understand. Of course not. So, thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling. I mean, it was
we
an
appreciate
interesting
it.
discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, and call back anytime.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I was just basically giving one example of a way that you could avoid saying, oh, well, the whole problem can be applied to the atheistic position as to the theistic position of, well, where did X come from, and the infinite regress issue.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's how I avoid infinite regress. How do you avoid infinite regress? I use double coupons and
Yeah. Okay.
We can do that silly point in the afternoon.
I mean, personally, I think that first cause is self-refuting, because first it says everything has a cause, and then it says, and here's this thing that doesn't have a cause.
Right. Yeah. Special.
So I mean, really underlying the first cause argument is an actual belief that there are things without causes, and if you're starting from that point anyway, then there's no point in assuming that the thing without a cause is anything like what people call a god.
Yeah, I mean, why can't it just be the universe?
Right.
That is the thing without a cause.
Okay. Next we have Phil in New York City.
Hey guys.
Hey Phil.
What's up?
Just hanging.
Just doing a show on Sunday.
Am I supposed to hear myself?
What?
You're doing fine.
Just make sure that your speakers can't be heard through your microphones. In fact, it's a good tip for everybody that wearing headphones and not having speakers would be best.
Yeah.
I got a headset.
Okay.
Well, anyways, I think I'm good. So, you mentioned a lot of speculation I was saying around, so let's just assume all that to get to these two questions that I have real quick, all right? Whole God thing.
Sure.
Okay.
So, my reason is that I don't hear Christians ask these two questions. The first is real quick, and that is, how do they know God is not Satan and vice versa? And somebody actually mentioned in the chat room. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
And two is a little longer. So, two goes like this. Say that God is free will, and he's unable to sin for whatever reason. And if you put aside the good argument, God is all-knowing, then he cannot have free will, and that he's unable to sin for reason. If you accept all that, then the question is, why did he create humans with the same free will, but without the inability to sin? So, didn't we choose to love him freely without free will, but still have that inability to sin?
Well, I mean, I have another angle on that question, actually, which is presumably in heaven, people will stop sinning and just love God. Do those arguments no longer apply once you're dead and in heaven? I mean,
is there free will in heaven?
Do people stop having free will because all they do is what makes God happy?
Actually heard in some theists said that there is no free will in heaven or hell. It's just because God is there.
Well, that sucks. I don't want to go there.
During the living time.
Right. Well, then I have to wonder what the point is and why heaven is heavenly if there's no free agency there.
And if you have no free will, I mean, if you are in essence stripped of the essence of something that makes you human, then in what sense is it really you in heaven instead of just some robot going around who looks like you and says some things that you might have said? But I mean, if he has no free will, how will it be me? I'm not comforted by the idea that there will be an automaton replica of me.
That if God has free will and he's unable to, why don't we have the same? We have free will like he does. Supposedly, but
I think Christians would come back at you with the they would say, oh well, because of the fall, right? We were that way, but then there was the fall. Because of the fall, then
but the fall was sinning, but we had the ability to sin even.
I'm not saying that you should expect logic and consistency from these responses. It's just that's probably what you'll get.
That's why I never hear these answers.
Yeah.
I never hear these questions.
But what I find funny about this whole point that you bring up, Steve, is that. If one thing that I forever hear Christians say, right, especially when you want to get into arguments about things like the problem of evil, and why didn't God stop that little girl from being raped, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? They always want to come back with something like, God can't interfere with our free will, right?
Exactly.
He can't stop the rapist because the rapist has to be free to do that.
The inability?
Yeah, and if God interfered with our free will, we'd all just be a bunch of mindless robots, and God doesn't want mindless robots. But if there's no free will in heaven...
Apparently he does.
Yeah, so it's like, what
this is a testing ground to see if you're worthy of becoming a mindless robot.
That must be it, yeah.
I'm not sure you're getting my question, though.
Okay.
Well, you are kind of cutting in and out a little bit on your mic, so just to let you know.
I'm sorry about that.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Yes, it is. It is say we have free will, and therefore that explains the sin. Mm-hmm. I'm asking, if we have free will like God, why don't we also have his inability to sin? That's the question.
Ask a Christian.
Yeah, I
certainly can't.
Yeah, I mean, we think that's a good point.
I can't rationalize that for you.
And you should ask Christians that question and let us know what answers you get, because it would be interesting to see how
maybe you can ask them. A bigger audience.
Yeah, if a theist is watching us right now, if a Christian's watching us and wants to call and answer that question, then by all means, please do.
Sure, call in. I mean, I don't mention this all the time, but if you are a Christian, I encourage the call screeners to fast track you to the front, or a Muslim for that matter, or you know, a believer of some sort who would like to disagree in some way.
Right.
That note, I'm going to be off. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Also, regarding the how do you know God isn't Satan, I have mentioned a couple times that I took a playwriting class as an undergrad, and the play that I wrote was something that I had bouncing around my head, which was one of these college street preachers turned out to be ushering in the Antichrist. Somebody who is, in their own eyes, a true believer. Is actually committing the ultimate evil and helping that along.
And is he doing it unknowingly?
Unwittingly. But the guy who comes along also comes across as he says, "Hey, I'm a believer just like you."
Oh, okay. Well, you should dig that play up, or is it one of these old?
It's on my website.
All right then.
It's apollowebworks.com/Russell. But anyway, you can find it.
Yeah. We should challenge our viewers that whoever does the best YouTube version of Russell's play.
No.
Yes.
No, this would be horrible.
No, that's it. The challenge of the gauntlet is thrown, people. Find Russell's play at apollowebworks.com. Whoever does the best YouTube version of it, we will showcase it.
Oh, no.
You walked right into that one, dude.
No, I'm afraid I did.
Okay, well, we have Winston on the line, and we would like to talk to him now. Thank
Winston
you.
in Sydney, Australia. How are you, Winston?
No. Right, I'm in Hong Kong now.
Oh, yeah. Wow, even better.
Okay.
Wow. I'm envious.
Yeah, before I get to my topic, I'd like to encourage anyone who wants to buy an apologetics book to try and find an old one on Amazon or eBay for $1 or less. That way you hardly give any money to the actual ministries.
That's good.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. If you are inclined to buy apologetics books.
Yeah. And I'd like to talk about Australia's Office of Film and Literature Classification and their retarded censorship policies. I don't know if you've got my email where I outlined the points that I plan to talk about, but I'd like to talk about some recent developments and court decisions, and then I'd like to ask your opinions on what you think about them. Is that all right?
Sure thing.
If I just keep in mind we have no expertise on Australian law.
We get
or anything,
like 100 emails a week, so we might have gotten your email. And
yeah,
I understand.
Right.
Sorry, I'll explain it in layman's terms, but
right. Okay.
we've banned twice as many games as the next country on the list, which is Brazil.
Which games are banned? Or, I mean, for example.
Postal 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Single Flirt Up Your Life. The reason they cite is sexuality and nudity in relation to incentives and rewards. And what they don't understand is that every violent game pretty much glorifies violence by saying that if you're violent, you'll win the game. So I don't really see the difference. But one of the reasons they cite in allowing violence is the context changes everything according to them. And to me, the context is like building a bomb shelter out of styrofoam. Because if it's violent, then it's going to traumatize a child no matter what the context is.
So are you saying... let's clarify what your position on all of this is. Are you in disagreement with these game bans, or are you essentially saying that well, if they're going to ban these, they might as well ban all the rest because their rationale is not sensible, and is it your position that they should just not ban any of them? I mean, I get the impression that you think it's wrong for them to have banned these in the first place.
Yeah.
And then you think that their reasons are stupid on top of that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's insane, I think. Yeah, because number one, it's inconsistent and hypocritical, and number two, they're victimless crimes in the first place, and they don't increase violence; they reduce violence by, well, generating tax revenue for one thing, creating jobs, and relieving stress, which is always better than the alternative.
Right. By the way, I have not played Postal, but from what I've heard of it, I think it probably sucked, and I would not enjoy it. But
yeah.
They should have allowed you to kill censors in that game.
But I have played and enjoyed recently Grand Theft Auto 4, which I'm guessing is probably another one that they banned. Is it?
It was censored for sexual violence.
And, for the sex, but not for indiscriminately killing people all the time, which is most of what you do in that game.
Exactly, and they don't like shooting. They didn't like the hot coffee incident where you shot a prostitute.
Right. I don't think you shot a prostitute in hot coffee. They just showed a little more skin then.
Yeah.
I mean, you could shoot a prostitute at any time in that game.
Right. You can shoot anyone, anywhere.
Yeah, the thing about context is that it can be ignored. I mean, a pedophile can masturbate over a sex education chapter because they have drawings of 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 16-year-old.
Sure, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's no way that you can legislate away crazy. And sure, a lot of these overreaching censorship laws, I think, rather naively try to do that. And so, like, well, if we just and they mistakenly, they want to find an easy scapegoat for some, for horrible violence in culture or society or what have you, and they go, "Ooh, well, there's this nasty video game, and nobody likes these, so we'll ban these, and then the voters will see what a wonderful moralist I am, and they'll reelect me."
At the same time, I wouldn't completely rule out the idea that some games, by the way they're structured, encourage crazy. While I'm not a fan of censorship in any form, I think, Well,
I think an argument can be made that
depends.
Manhunt 2 probably doesn't have a whole lot of redeeming social value, but
yeah.
I think there it's, the question becomes, all right, are you stable enough to distinguish fantasy from reality and know, however tasteless this might be, that you're playing a game? Then right, at that point,
I mean, and also a culture tends to develop around some multiplayer games. I don't know.
Yeah, but the World of Warcrafts out there and the stuff like that's out there that are really, really popular, they're not as beyond the pale as Manhunt 2, right?
That's
in
true.
terms of you tend to when a culture, an online culture develops in that sort of situation, doesn't it kind of become this like self-policing sort of?
Not necessarily.
It can be, or is everybody just crazy?
It can be self-escalating like an angry mob. I mean, it really depends.
That's when it gets fun, I guess.
No.
Oh, okay.
But anyway,
because I don't do the Memorpica thing, so I don't know.
I've got a lot more, and it gets a lot more steamy and worse. So please bear with me. Even though they ban games for using sex as an incentive, guess what is completely legal and regulated in Australia? I'll give you half of a guess.
Tentacle porn?
No, prostitution.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it seems that the cultural mores that we've inherited are very... they just don't make any sense.
So you can pay for sex, but you can't pay to have fake sex.
You can't simulate it on a video game, but you can pay for the real thing.
You can have phone sex 69 cents per 9 seconds, as we all learned in boarding school, but you're not allowed to... Well, we don't have an R rating for games. It only goes up to MA, and the problem with that is a lot of games that really should have an R rating are rated MA, and some 15-year-olds are really shocked because the rating on the front of the cover doesn't tell you about anything other than violence.
To me, this just suggests that there are a bunch of old people who don't understand the medium, and the solution to that would be to wait for them to die.
Well, I wish, but I come up with a theory about their censorship rules regarding porn. The only thing that makes sense to me is, verily I say to thee, if Voldemort and or half of our censorship board get aroused by the material, it is deemed unfit for adult consumption because it offends the standards of a reasonable adult. But I think most adults would be more offended that they're wasting time prosecuting these victimless crimes. I mean, last December, someone was fined $3,000 for having pictures of Bart and Lisa Simpson having sex. And the judge said that even though they don't look exactly like human beings, well, they are human beings and therefore they have human rights. Well, that makes J.K. Rowling a mass murderer.
Oh dear.
The same goes for Ray Fiennes when he played Amon Girth in Schindler's List.
Yeah. Wow.
Or, I mean, he also played the crazy guy in...
Australia.
Yeah, Ray Fiennes also played the crazy guy in Silence of the Lambs,
and he's Voldemort.
Of course.
Silence of the Lambs, wasn't that Anthony Hopkins?
That was Hopkins, yeah.
Yes, but the Hopkins didn't kill anybody in the movie. They were trying to stop Ray Fiennes.
No.
He was the puts the lotion on the skin guy.
No, that was a different guy, but not Ray Fiennes.
I think the real Voldemort is concerned that they portrayed him as too compassionate in the movies.
Well,
but anyway, the rationale, if you can call it that, was to discourage real child abuse. But Homer commits child abuse every time he strangles Bart in that instance.
Yeah. So they're latching on essentially to fiction and fantasies and video games and cartoons and thinking that if we stamp this kind of thing out, it will somehow improve things in real life, and that strikes me as being incredibly delusional and ridiculous. But welcome to censorship. Censorship is not sensible, right? I mean, the whole philosophy behind censorship is we have to protect you from yourself. We know better than you do what's good for you and what's not.
Yeah,
and there's sort of an innate arrogance in that.
They can't raise tax funds to fight these problems that they claim are caused by what they ban.
Well, I think that the thing to do is just get out there and be active, and when you see legislators doing ridiculous things like this in your country, do whatever it is you're able to do. Stand up, speak out. Go to public hearings if they have them, and give your opinion of why it's absurd, and do the consciousness raising thing, as Dawkins puts it. Raise consciousness about these ideas.
Speaking of which, I wish Mr. Stuff's FSM in the background would have said something, but oh well, you can't have everything your way. And my theory, or my activism, is to use the Ted Haggard effect. I'm going to send censors and as many people in customs as I can cartoon child porn DVDs from Japan.
Nice.
They'd also have to explain why I look at cartoon child porn every day, because my fetish is a lack of pubic hair, and I haven't molested.
TMI, dude. All right, I think we need to move on. Yeah. Hey, but listen, we appreciate talking to you. Lots of fun. Thanks. We got to get online with Richard next. All right.
Thanks.
Take care.
Richard in Manassas, you're on next.
Richard?
Just a minute. We don't have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. You handed us the name.
Chirp. Okay,
gotcha.
Right. We have to actually call out to the person, and they have to answer. In the meantime,
I'm still.
Oh, never mind. Richard.
Yes.
Are you there?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I'm on the air?
Yes. You are on the air. We can hear you great.
Okay. Hi.
How are you?
You're on the intertubes, actually.
Intertubes. Oh, this is awesome. Hey, I wanted to say, first of all, I think, as far as I know, you're the first atheists I've spoken to that I knew were atheists anyway.
Okay. So I take it you're not an atheist, or you don't talk to yourself.
I definitely am an atheist, but I'm surrounded. Family and community, and so I feel like a little island of sanity in the middle of
We're
madness.
delighted to be here for you, Richard. What's on your mind?
Thank you. Okay. I'm certain of my atheism. Let's get that started. But I'm not sure it's the greatest idea for society. And I'm trying to walk you through this. As we've gone off and we've discovered all these tribes and primitive peoples in in the world in general, we always find they have some supernatural beliefs, rituals, some sort of superstitions involved. And that seems to me to say that religiosity is something innate in humans, is something we're built with. And if it's preserved like that, that makes me think that it has some sort of evolutionary benefit. And I don't know exactly what that is, but I think we need to figure it out.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry. We're like,
Go ahead, step on each other. That's fine.
Well, I was simply going to make the point that you're not the first guy to have observed this, and it's widely discussed. I would tend to put it this way.
Okay.
I think that being social beings, a sense of community is very important to us.
Agreed.
In the history of civilization and human culture, I think the earliest examples of community forming in this way, and especially community forming under a recognizable leadership that people could look up to, that would hand us, good rules to live by, and that sort of thing, and who would be perhaps maybe paternal figures in the tribe or what have you. Well, this tended to go hand in hand with the development of religion in early culture, right?
Yeah, and that was very important because you're competing with neighboring tribes for resources.
Right.
So the stronger society is going to win out in that case, and it means actually that's my basis for morality. If you ask me, that's where morality came from.
Well,
the stronger society has the better morals and will compete better. It doesn't mean they're killing off the neighbors. It means they're just better at.
They're better
doing
they're
it.
better
I
able to
agree
work
with that.
together. Yeah.
There are a couple of things, though. First of all, there was actually a study that I ran into this morning while printing stuff and then sadly rejected, so I can't read it to you. But
Aw.
it was just within the last few years that this study came out, which was basically analyzing the religiosity level of different countries and their I don't know, some metric of morality, maybe violent crime or something like that. And what they found was that level of religiosity was actually inversely correlated to whatever standard of amorality they were using. So, I mean, you've got like a very a-religious country like, I don't know, Iceland, I think, was one of the least.
Norway?
Or
Is that
Norway,
the
that's
country?
the one. Yeah,
Okay.
I think Norway is the least religious country.
In the West,
and, and has like one of the highest standards of living and the highest rates of happiness, or something to that effect. I hate doing this blind. I should have printed this.
I'm sorry. Well, I think their surrogate for religion is socialism. It kind of plays all the roles that are religious.
No, because they filter
Oh?
out effects like that.
Oh,
I think.
all right.
But I think that it's more the community. You know, when you if you look at religion today in America, for example, right, and
Right.
you see
There's lots of it.
but you know, you look at the way churches are structured, right? There are and especially the bigger churches, where you know, what do you do at a church? Well, they essentially form a little community within the community.
That's it. They're social groups, yeah.
Right, and so you have that, and you have little fellowship groups, and the you know, this is that or the other meeting, and then of course you have the huge sanctuary that everyone gets together in, and then it provides not just worship service on Sunday, but the church has really tried to provide this sort of year-round, 24/7, you know, one-stop shop for all of your, you know, just innate social human needs, right? So you have
That's absolutely true, and
Yeah.
and that's not such a bad thing. If you
that's
ask
not
me.
such a bad thing, but I think that kind of, it's, you know, the religion that was done, that sort of evolved at the same time. You know, the need.
It did evolve, yeah.
Yeah, the need for that sense of community was there first, I think.
Right,
It
but
happened to coexist with the development and evolution of religion.
But religion also has a bunch of extra baggage, which is not necessarily which is not necessarily beneficial to the hosts, the people who are carrying the religious beliefs.
Well,
But it is
evolution doesn't
beneficial.
always give you just what you need and take away all the stuff you
Yeah,
don't.
but evolution also comes up with things like parasites, and one of the things that I mean, you know, one of the concepts, a lot of people talk about religion as a meme, which is sort of like a mind virus.
Right.
I mean, if you think about a virus evolving, it doesn't make any sense to say, well, humans are carriers of the flu virus, and so therefore the flu virus must have some sort of benefit to us. That would be kind of missing the point. The flu virus evolved because the flu virus has learned to use a human body in a maximally efficient way to keep reproducing itself. But that doesn't mean that having the flu is good for people. You follow what I'm saying?
But that's absolutely true. But having a good sense of community is good for
Sure,
people.
that is part
So
of
we
religion
need
is
something.
good.
I was really disappointed. I sat down and watched pretty much every tape I could from the Beyond Belief forums that they had they've had a couple of them. They had one in 2006 and one in 2007.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know which one you mean. Yeah.
You remember those?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And one of the subtitles of their forum was, "If not religion, then what?" And unfortunately, that's the one thing they didn't discuss. They had all kinds of topics about, well, why are people like this? We're absolutely sure there's no God, and this is why we know, and this is why we know, and aren't we great for knowing? But they didn't come up with any alternatives, and that infuriated me, too.
Yeah, but what's the alternative to the flu virus?
Well,
the alternative is not having the
but
flu.
What's the alternative to having community? Well, not having community.
Well, okay, there is an
I've kind of got
alternative
that
to
now,
community.
and let me tell you guys, it kind of sucks.
You should form groups like the Atheist Community of Austin. You should join us for dinner if you're in Austin after the show at Pluckers, and you should go out of your way to come to Austin for the Bat Cruise on September 26th.
But let me try to address this point a little bit more directly. Because I know what you're getting at, really. And with religion, because it has been with us for so very long, right? The structure's there, right? The structure for that sense of community, which is all important, is there. And I think that even with the supernatural belief and the baggage that religion is trying to sell, I think that if you were to, really kind of question the people who partake in all of this, they'll tell you that when you get right down to it, it is the sense of community that they get out of it. Perhaps even more so in most cases than the God belief or I always surprise a lot of people, as much as I'm a hardline atheist, by telling them, all my memories of, being an adolescent and growing up in church and doing youth activities and stuff are all pleasant, right? So even I'm willing to acknowledge the value of the community. So why religion perpetuates is because the machinery's in place, right? To provide that sense of community. And atheism, more or less, being fairly new in the cultural, landscape, as it were. I mean, there have always been people back to antiquity who haven't believed in God or gods, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But in the West, especially, and in modern times, it's only been within the last 100 or a couple hundred years that a person, and they're European or whoever, whatever have you could come out and say, well, I don't believe in God, and I think the Bible is a load of rubbish, and so there you are. And
it's only been like 3 generations we've had any kind of secular nations. Anyway.
Right. It's and not face blasphemy laws, right? Not be thrown in prison for saying I don't believe in God. And they're even still trying to do that today in Ireland.
I think
so it's a new phenomenon, and atheism and non-belief hasn't had the time to put that community structure together.
You ought to consider also that your bias, that your perception might be a little skewed based on the fact that, like you said at the beginning of this call, you are actually in a place where you aren't aware of any atheists, of any other atheists that you've talked to. If you come from that kind of environment, of course you're going to come away with sort of a feeling that the only way you can get any sort of community or communal well-being, striving towards common goals, is to impose this artificial fake belief in an invisible man in the sky. But I mean, from my different perspective as a guy who grew up in an atheist family, I've never felt that that theism particularly provides something that I was fundamentally lacking in any way.
But his circumstance is the more common circumstance of everyone in our country.
Yeah.
And what we've got going on in here with Austin, with the ACA and what have you, is, it's an emergent phenomenon. Atheists are wow, there's atheists on TV, and there's an atheist club, and there's all these atheist sites on the web I can visit. It's a new discovery to a lot of people.
Most of them aren't saying wow, I'll bet.
Well, right. well, the atheists who are.
Oh my God, that's what they're saying.
The community aspect of religion is an absolutely great benefit, and I believe that it is the number one reason why religion continues to perpetuate that. And I think in some ways the religious beliefs, the supernatural beliefs, do help people manage basic insecurities in life, whether or not they're getting the right answer. The idea of maybe there's a heaven to go to kind of makes death a little less scary sometimes.
Well, yeah, you know what? I'd love to believe in an afterlife because I don't really want to die. I'll take that, eternal life. Yeah. I'd be happy with that.
I tell people, afterlife, I'm all for it, right? But you just need a little more in the way of evidence for.
Not so much with the being tortured forever thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
no.
If that's the alternative, I'm fine with dying.
But you bring up some really great points, and we're happy to hear from you. And we're coming down the last couple minutes, so we should probably.
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
thanks.
So we're in the last 30 seconds, and goodbye, everybody. I'd like to thank all the incredibly brilliant, tech-savvy people who tune in despite our lack of real TV. And
this is real TV for the 21st century, man.
The very hard-working people who surround us in this very room right now, who you can't see, but you could if you were coming to Pluggers. And thank you, Martin, for another really fun show. I always have a good time with you.
Oh, me prattling on, I know.
All right. See you later, everyone.
Bye. Visit the blog.